On January 28, 2018, a routine 911 call would set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. Harry Gandert, a 62-year-old man, reported the sudden and mysterious disappearance of his sister, 65-year-old Marilyn Gandert. What began as a missing person case soon spiraled into a horrifying investigation that would shock an entire community. Today, we'll take you through a chilling journey, a tale of betrayal, darkness, and greed that led to a shocking revelation. This is the story of Marilyn Gandert and the sinister events that unfolded after her disappearance. Scene 1. The disappearance and initial investigation. Harry reported his sister Marilyn missing after not hearing from her for several days. Living 20 miles south of Albuquerque, Harry saw no signs of danger or conflict. The 911 call was urgent, but there were no initial clues of foul play. Detectives learned that Harry had visited Marilyn recently, and everything seemed fine before her sudden disappearance. Harry told detectives that his sister lived alone in a quiet suburban home, having endured immense grief with the loss of her husband and the suicide of her son, Ryan. When she stopped answering calls, it felt ominous, though no one fully understood the significance at the time. As days passed, Nancy Robinson, Marilyn's longtime friend from the post office, grew increasingly anxious, sensing something was terribly wrong. Marilyn's sudden disappearance raised alarms, prompting a quick response from the police. They arrived at her home and noticed unsettling signs. After knocking with no answer, they checked the backyard and approached the side of the garage. Unable to see inside, they moved to the back and found the front door wide open, prompting them to enter and search for Marilyn. Inside, the police observed something unusual. Pill bottles and medical papers were scattered across the floor. Marilyn was nowhere to be found, and the rest of the house appeared undisturbed. However, there was one peculiar detail. Marilyn's house keys were left hanging on the front doorknob. The open door, the missing woman, and the unsettling clue left behind. The scene presented a mystery that suggested something darker was at play. The investigation soon turned to another property linked to Marilyn, a nearby house she had been renting to her daughter-in-law. Alissa Nancy told the police that Alissa and her family had recently moved out of the property. Alissa, Marilyn's 43-year-old daughter-in-law, had been living in the house along with her 19-year-old son, Drake, and a friend named Annie Rail. When the officers arrived at Alissa's home, they found her in the process of moving out. Alissa told the police she planned to pick up keys from Marilyn on Saturday and finish moving out by Sunday, offering her text messages as potential evidence. The detectives, unaware of the deeper implications, continued their investigation, speaking to anyone who had seen or heard from Marilyn, but found no new leads. Despite finding no clues inside the house, the police left with a timeline from Alissa, which could be key to solving Marilyn's disappearance. As time passed, anxiety grew, with her brother, friend, and daughter-in-law all baffled by her sudden vanishing. Scene 2. The investigation takes a dark turn. On the night of January 26, 2018, a woman driving home in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, noticed a smoldering pile on the road, emitting black smoke and faint orange embers. Though the dark road and eerie sight made her continue driving, the image lingered in her mind. The next morning, curiosity led her to return with her husband. What they discovered was chilling: a charred, twisted body lying among the remains of the pile. Her husband immediately called the police, setting off an investigation that would uncover a dark and sinister truth. The body was disfigured beyond recognition, but there were signs that it had been deliberately burned. Metal restraints encircled the wrists and ankles, twisted tightly as though the person had been forcibly restrained. The right foot was missing, severed cleanly at the ankle. and the mouth was frozen open in a gaping "oh," as if caught in a final, eternal scream. The following day, word of the body spread to Albuquerque, shaking the community to its core, most of all, Marilyn's brother. The charred remains were a gruesome sight, and it quickly became clear that Marilyn had not simply disappeared. She had been murdered. But the question was, how did she end up in such a remote location, burned beyond recognition? What had happened in the days leading up to her disappearance? When asked about Marilyn's relationship with her daughter-in-law, Harry described it as more of a frenemy dynamic. Investigators also discovered that Alissa hadn't moved out voluntarily. She had been evicted, a detail she hadn't disclosed. With this revelation, the focus shifted from Marilyn's home, where no signs of a struggle or blood were found, to another property Marilyn owned, the house she had rented to Alissa, who had recently been forced to leave. The detectives shifted their focus to Marilyn's grandson, Drake, who, along with his girlfriend, Nikki, had relocated to a hotel following the eviction. Drake told the detectives that the last time he saw his grandmother outside the house was during the move when his mother and her friend were packing up their belongings. He stated that everything seemed normal at the time, with no signs of trouble. Since Drake was only 19, detectives initially dismissed his lack of awareness regarding the situation. However, they were now ready to break the news of his grandmother's death and carefully watch his response. His reaction was unusual, almost as though he were feigning innocence. He claimed that nothing seemed out of the ordinary and that everyone was fine the last time he saw them. Scene 3. The search that exposed the crime and its shocking killers. With a search warrant, the officers meticulously searched Alissa home. The initial search of the house yielded no clues, but a single drop of blood on the entryway wall hinted at something darker. Alissa soon learned of Marilyn's body being found, though she had never mentioned the eviction during her earlier conversations with the police, which struck detectives as suspicious. Nancy revealed Marilyn's frustration with Alissa over unpaid rent after Ryan's death, which led to Marilyn changing the locks and deciding to sell the house. Alissa claimed the eviction was cordial, but the detectives were skeptical. While the police continued their search, Annie arrived at the driveway. While investigating those close to Marilyn, detectives examined the autopsy report, which revealed a violent and brutal death. Marilyn had been beaten, stabbed, and then set on fire. After her murder, the perpetrator or an accomplice moved her body to Rio Rancho, placed it on a mattress, and ignited it. The medical examiner found no evidence of sexual assault, but ligature marks around Marilyn's wrists and ankles indicated she had been bound either before or during the killing. Alissa's interview further uncovered unsettling details that heightened suspicions. Alissa's account didn't align with the timeline, prompting detectives to probe her about the discrepancies. Her claim that she last saw Marilyn on Saturday morning was particularly suspicious, as investigators had already determined Marilyn was deceased by then. Due to these inconsistencies, the police took both Alissa and Annie into custody for formal interrogation. Scene 4. The key breakthrough. Evidence and confession. Following this, detectives also brought Drake into custody for questioning. During his interview, he disclosed something that would alter the course of the entire investigation. Drake's chilling confession revealed a twisted sense of duty. He told detectives that he had reluctantly complied with his grandmother's request, justifying his actions as a fulfillment of his obligations to her. The detectives had been anticipating this moment, the heavy silence that preceded a confession. This was the conclusion of their investigation, the point where the truth, however grim, would finally emerge. Drake's confession, while chilling, left the detectives unconvinced. They suspected he might be shielding his mother and Annie, taking the blame to protect them. This possibility only deepened their resolve to uncover the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be. The chilling truth ultimately revealed that Marilyn's murder was not the work of outsiders, but a tragic betrayal by those closest to her. Drake's confession, supported by mounting evidence, confirmed the involvement of Alissa, Drake, and Annie in the crime. However, Alissa offered a drastically different account of the events. Alissa provided a different version of events, stating that she had left Marilyn alone with Annie. When she came back, she found Annie cleaning a bloody knife. According to her account, Drake had no involvement and seemed to be nothing more than a worried grandson. However, inconsistencies in Alissa's story quickly emerged, prompting the detectives to scrutinize her account more closely. The investigation shifted its focus to the third person involved in the situation, Annie. Both Annie and Alissa agreed on certain aspects of the events, acknowledging that Annie had been the first to physically confront Marilyn. However, Alissa's account deliberately omitted crucial details. She failed to reveal that the confrontation had been premeditated, making it appear to be a spontaneous act. Furthermore, Alissa concealed Drake's presence during the crime scene. Annie's version of events was far more chilling. She revealed that Drake had been actively involved in the murder, not merely a bystander. According to Annie, Drake had helped restrain Marilyn, participated in the assault, and ultimately played a role in her death. As investigators reconstructed the events, they reached a chilling conclusion. Marilyn's murder was not an impulsive act, but a premeditated crime carried out by a family working together to cover up their actions. Nikki, Drake's girlfriend, recounted a chilling story in which Alissa and Annie threatened her with a gun and knife to help dispose of Marilyn's body. She described Marilyn's bloodied, lifeless form, which Alissa wrapped in a sheet and loaded into Annie's truck. Nikki was then forced to drive them to a remote location where they executed their plan. Surveillance footage corroborated Nikki's account, placing Annie's truck near the identified dump site. Subsequent forensic analysis uncovered evidence, including traces of Marilyn's blood, her purse, medications, and keys, all found in the bed of the truck. Scene 4. The verdict and sentences delivered. In May 2018, Alissa was arrested for Marilyn's murder, followed shortly by the arrest of Annie. Both Alissa and her son Drake subsequently confessed to their involvement in the crime, pleading guilty to second-degree murder. The court proceedings unveiled the horrifying details of the crime, revealing that Alissa, driven by anger and resentment over the eviction notice, had turned her frustration into a violent and deadly attack. As the prosecution prepared for trial, Marilyn's family, seeking to avoid the emotional turmoil of a lengthy courtroom battle, decided to accept a plea agreement. The case would be a painful reminder for those who had known the Gandert family, a cautionary tale of how appearances can be deceiving. What seemed like a routine missing person case quickly spiraled into a dark, tragic tale of family betrayal, greed, and violence. Thank you for watching. If you found this story chilling, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life mysteries. And as always, stay safe and stay curious.